Now we're walking up the driveway. So this is our part 2, which is how things are looking in the front yard. This is the strawberry tree, which was put in just almost exactly a month ago. We put it in to replace the original olive, which we tried so hard to save, but we just couldn't. So here's what it looks like from this angle. I think you'll be able to tell if you look at the ends of each one of these, that bright green new growth, which is probably because of the soil conditioning that they put in, plus the magic juice that they've had me add a couple of different times over the past month. So it's really given it a kick in the pants as far as growth is concerned. Up there at the top, you can still see it's got its kind of pink blossoms up there, and those will eventually fall away and be replaced by red berries. That'll be over in the fall and into the winter. So it's just a gorgeous tree. You can see that beautiful red bark. Sort of, in a sense, it kind of imitates the manzanita, at least as far as the red bark is concerned. It's kind of the twisty character of the trunk and the branches. And I just think that's going to be just great there. These 3 agaves were around the side of the house, and I decided I needed to have a little bit of an accent here, or it would help to have an accent. And so I planted those 3 there last fall, and as you would expect with agave, which is pretty hardy, they seem to be making the transition just fine, and they will get a lot bigger than that over time, plus produce other agaves that'll fill that space in. They planted a few of these sundrops along this path, and I liked them so much that I added quite a bit additional. It is very reliable. You just trim them back a little bit at the end of winter, trim them down, and then they just spring right up again. So that's Sundrops. I decided to sprinkle some of the Blackfoot Daisy here along this path. And so these are just little 4-inch containers that have only been in a little while, so they're not really showing up too much. But I'm optimistic that they'll do just fine and start to look more like that one, and like this one, and like that one. Because both the Sundrops and the Blackfoot Daisy have a long bloom season. I would say their bloom season around here for each of them is over a 7-month period, which is really nice when the Cleveland sage right there, which came on and looked, that particular Aromas was looking very strong, but is now, it's starting to get beyond its peak, and in a little while I'll have to cut it back. The Winifred Gilman here, on the other hand, it's probably at about peak right now. Sometimes they call this a blue sage. You can see even in the shade that it's really quite pretty. Maybe we'll get another shot here and get it backlit, and maybe you get a better sense of what the color is on that. Really pretty. We're about peak right now, and it'll last through June, and then it'll be time to cut it back. So I've already mentioned 2 sages, the Winifred Gilman, which is out there in the front in the shade, and then This is the Cleveland sage Aromas. But behind it, I've got some white sage. Got a couple of plants of white sage here in the back. And those, of course, will sprout big, tall, giant 6-foot stalks after they get established. Hey, mockingbirds, how are you? Over here in the shade here, nestled among a couple of Spanish lavender, is this Salvia greggii, or autumn sage. And that one actually started as this plant 2 years ago. And that little guy has come in on its own. And so that, and I've noticed that in a couple of other places where the autumn sage or Salvia greggii has done that. Italian cypress, of course, is not a California native, but it is a Mediterranean plant. It's well adapted to our Mediterranean climate. And I added the Italian cypress because the flavor of the house is kind of a Mediterranean flavor, and I thought that they would look good there, and I'm happy with them. With the kind of Mediterranean feel to the house, I wanted to put this lavender in here right across the top of this planter. And I went down to Green Thumb, and I wanted 16 plants of Spanish lavender. And they had 16 Spanish lavender and about 5 different varieties. So that's what I've got going on here, which may not have been the best idea because you actually can tell that there's the big ones and the small ones. But anyway, it's all beyond its peak, and so I will come in here in the next week or two and just chop that all back by about half, and then we'll get another bloom out of it later in the year.